G'day guys, welcome back to Supercoach for DR. Today we have a very, very special guest on the channel. We have Julien, coach of the Crazy Frogs. Now, Julien has had an outstanding season so far and was the overall leader from rounds 1 to 3. So, Julien, thank you very much for coming on the channel. How have you been, mate?
Yeah, good idea. Thanks for having me today. I'm very happy to be on this body. I'm very good, in Adelaide, lockdown today. So hopefully that's the last day today. Tomorrow, kids are back to school. Will be good.
Celebration time from a parents' point of view and a teacher's point of view. I think Julien. But look, but before we get into Supercoach, and I must mention as well that Spills would have loved to be here tonight, but just times didn't match up. So definitely next time, Julien, we have you on the channel, mate. Spills will be really looking forward to having a chat with you as well, buddy. But look, before we actually start talking Supercoach, tell us a little bit about yourself, because we know you've got a bit of a French connection. How long have you been with us in Australia, and how did you get into this great game? Not only of AFL, but our great game of Supercoach.
Yeah, so I arrived in Australia 5 years ago, 2016. I was working overseas, arrived in Australia, knows nothing about footy, and I had my colleagues at work. I know they were talking about some teams with some crazy names, with animals, and what are they doing? And they show me the sport. I went to the Adelaide Oval with them, and we talk about it at the coffee break. And that's a really awesome game. And then get into Supercoach 2017, first season. And I was just learning how it works. Finish rank 70K. And year after year, I did learn, listen to some podcasts. I joined the Discord from George. And look at your stock market video and listen to different stuff, and I just keep improving. Last year I was ranked 1,500, and this year was just amazing.
Oh, fantastic, mate! Now, rap that you got into this great game. Is there a lot of exposure with AFL back in France, Julien?
Never. I never heard this sport before coming to Australia. Never. And it's a weird sport. It's a mix between, I don't know, rugby, basketball, soccer. It's just amazing.
It certainly is a unique game, isn't it, mate?
Yeah,
unique game, and I think that's why we all love it so much. But look, mate, on to Supercoach now. This is the one thing that Spills really, really wanted to ask you. We want us to take us back to what it was like at the conclusion of round 1. So the final scores have just come through. You probably checked your Supercoach app, and you've seen that you're ranked number 1 after the first round of Supercoach. Did you get to sleep that night? How'd you feel in the morning? Was it like you just woken up on a cloud? Take us through the experience, mate, and try to relive that for us.
Well, I was on Twitter, and one of my mates, Supercoach Data, he was telling me, "Hey, you may run for the weekly this week." And I was on Discord with George and the team, and the guy was saying, "You have a huge score. Well, look, we'll see." And then, bam, Supercoach open, rank number 1. So, what is it? Is it real? And I went to see my wife in the kitchen and told her, "I'm number 1 in Supercoach." She say, "Super what?" I say, "Okay, right, hang on."
Get around me. Come on, get around me.
I say, "Come on, it's huge. We're number 1 in the country, a small Frenchie like me." And after I told her I may win some money, and that's good. So
when we start talking money, that gets the ears up, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I said, "Oh, that's good. So now I was really happy. And then I had Tim Mitchell from Supercoach who invited me to the Supercoach podcast, and my colleagues at work, and was it you? And it's just unreal, really unreal.
Congratulations. I would love to experience the same thing one day. I don't think so, mate. Maybe in my dreams, Julien. But look, going back to your starting side, obviously you got a lot of things right. So going into the season, was there a particular structure that you were going with? I know that some people love the guns and rookies, some people more of that mid-price approach. Was there a particular structure that you were going with, or did you simply select the players that you thought would be some of the highest scorers in each position? Take us through how you actually structured your team.
Well, first, when I finished my team, I was really happy. Like every player, I was happy. When I complete my team, I was happy. So I went heavy in defense. So I had Lloyd, Ridley, Daniel, Tom Stewart, and Jadon Short. And I had Jordan Clark, day 6. So yeah, when heavy, I was feeling that the scoring system was good for defender. So let's put some coins there. In the midfield, I had Oliver, McRae, Meret, and Laird to have some flexibility with Clark. And I took a punt on Taranto, M5. And then my big decision was to have Flynn, R2. So I had Gon and Flynn in the ruck. And then in forward, I had Dunkley, Dusty, and Zibol. So I went very light in forward. But what I liked is I had a lot of flexibility. So I had Fullerton and Tracy, ruck forward. So I had Laird and Clark, def mid, and I had some mid forward as well. So and I guess I was looking on the rookie as well. I picked the 3 Sydney boys, and I had Jordan, Powell, I had Highmore at this time. So yeah, I picked the good one. I had McNeil and Scott as well, the Bulldogs guys. So yeah, everything went well, and the big one was to put Dustin Martin, the vice captain, and he scored 158. So yeah,
what a start! Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's fantastic.
It was big.
It took a lot of faith as well, just to chuck the VC on Dusty straight up. Congratulations, mate. That's fantastic. And one thing, I don't know if you realise, I actually did a team review on your team after round 1. I always try to do a bit of review of the top ranked side after round 1. And I think I actually called you Adrian in that video, Julien. So apologies for that. I think someone pulled me up on that. It's actually Julien. So apologies for that, mate. I think I got onto you on Twitter and said apologies for that, mate. Congratulations with everything that you've done. So, but I like the way that, and I think it's really smart each year to have that flexibility, as you mentioned. So having that Laird combo with Clark down back and, those mid forwards, I think that's super important. And I think that's a lesson for everyone, is that flexibility is ultra important, particularly even at this stage of the season. So if you've got some Biancos flying through there at the moment, and even that Madden Briggs combo that you can have, I think that's ideal. Even that Rowan Marshall and then Jacobs in the ruck, for example. So I think that's a really, really good piece of advice. Try to make sure you've got some flexibility with some DPP. That's terrific stuff, Julien. And look, the next thing I want to ask you, mate, is obviously you had that number 1 rank from rounds 1 to 3. What sort of happened towards, the start of round 4? Were there any speed humps that you came across, or any particular injuries that you needed to manage? Was there a particular trade that maybe you'd love to take back, or is it just a matter of the pack starting to make up a little bit of ground, do you think?
No, I had, it basically did no trade. Run 1, run 2, run 3. Run 4, I did a rookie correction only. I get rid of Sharp for Berry. And otherwise, no injury. Has been pretty lucky at the beginning. And, when you're number 1, run 1, run 2, run 3, no trades, keep going still, no problem. So, now my big issue was run 5 when I trade Clark for Giath, CJ.
Okay.
And my mistake was I went with a camping trip with family and no signal. And I still wanted to have a look at the signal. And I saw Clark was out. I said, okay, who can I get for 400K? Giath. I didn't think. And that was a big mistake. So, yeah.
It's tough sometimes under pressure, and particularly when you're running with things like no signal.
Oh, yeah.
That makes it extremely tough, mate. Extremely tough. I know that there was one weekend, it was a big weekend, and I thought that I'd had it free. Then all of a sudden there were birthday parties at Time Zone I'd take the boys to. There was a family dinner that I'd completely forgotten about, and it can certainly put your Supercoach side out of whack, can't it, when you've got some other commitments during the weekend, mate? But look, the next thing that I wanted to ask you, mate, and we're going to fast forward to now. So what's the team looking like now? What's your overall rank? And do you currently still have any trades?
All right. No, I have no trades. So since run 3, so after run 3, run 4, I went pretty heavy. I burned all my trades because I was in very good position. And I especially did a lot of trade during the buys. So too many sideways. That's, I think, my takeaway for next year, lay sideways. I just wanted to fill as much as possible and get as much point as I can. And I did well because after the buy, I was ranked 54. So I went from my worst rank was 457, round 7. And I went back up to 54. And now I'm back down to 300. So yeah, amazing.
That's just amazing that your worst rank for the season is around the 400 and something mark. That just shows the consistent season that you've had, because a lot of these teams that we see go really well in the first couple of rounds really tend to taper off because they've usually got some really wacky pods that may have a really strong first couple of weeks and tend to die off a little bit. But that's the thing I've been most impressed with your season so far, I think, Julian's the fact that you started off really well and you've managed to maintain such a fantastic rank for the whole season. So you should be really, really proud of that, mate, because I know how tough it is to do. You tend to have those ebbs and flows, but if the worst you've done is around that 400 mark, then you're doing a lot of things right, mate. But look, the next thing I wanted to ask you, and this was really a really big talking point last week. Firstly, were you a Dustin Martin owner? I think you started with him. Obviously, you would have had him up until his injury.
Of course.
Who was the man that you ended up bringing in? Now, I went with De Goey myself. I looked at his midfield role and I thought, look, I've got just over the 490k mark. I can fit him in by about 5k. He's been getting the ball last 4 rounds of 100 plus. Things didn't work out overly well for me. He scored around an 80, I think it was. Where did you go yourself? Did you go with the Shea Bolton types like most people went, or did you go a little bit different? What was your plans for Dusty?
So I had already De Goey and Marshall. And being my last trade, I had a budget of 450k. And for 450k, best option was Shea Bolton with a mid-forward status. I really like it because Dusty was in my midfield as M8. But I didn't want to follow everyone on Shea Bolton. And my second best option was Sam Menegola.
Wow, outside the box. I like it, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to go outside the box for my last trade. I said, look, if I have to climb the rank, let's go elsewhere. And look at Menegola. He had some good scoring, less owned by less than 1%. He can score 150. He scored 150 against North Melbourne in round 5, and he's going to play them next round this weekend. So I said, look, let's go for it. And he scored me 80 last week. So that's okay, And yeah, I'm just hoping for a 150 this week now.
It'd be nice if history repeats itself. But look, you're right. An 80 last week, I suppose, wasn't too bad because some of the other selections that we've had, like your buddy, for example. I know some people looked at Nick Hind, Jake Stringer, myself with De Goey, Bailey Dale. There are a few underwhelming scores, weren't there, from some of those popular trading Dusty options? I think, if you went someone like a Taron Thomas, then fantastic. But I think he's actually out this week with delayed concussion, which is it's super unlucky, isn't it? With someone like a Taron Thomas selection, you're patting yourself on the back last week and you're going, yes, I got this one right. Then delayed concussion, you just can't plan for things like this, can you, mate? It's just super unlucky at times, this game, isn't it?
It is. I really wanted to have a key forward as a last trade in, and I was keen on Tommy Hawkins, but couldn't afford him. So yes,
outside your range as well. Yeah, but hopefully Hawkins and Menegola can have a good week for you this week. So at least it softens the blow. If the Tomahawk does go well, if Menegola can score well, Julian, then that should certainly soften it a little bit, I think, mate. But look, you did mention before, Julian, that you've learned a couple of lessons. I know that one of them you mentioned maybe wasn't a sideways trade as much as maybe what you did this year. Are there any other lessons that you've learned so far? I know we've still got 4 weeks to go in the season, but apart from those sideways trades, given your experience this year of being right up the top, was there anything else that you're really going to take away with you after the 2021 season, Julian?
So I think that confirms that flexibility is really important to have DPP players. That's very important. I think another one is holding on the rookies. Like I was lucky to have the good rookies, but I hold them very, very long. For example, Jordan, I still had him during the buys, and he was so precious, scoring 80 to 100. That's so big. And when I heard George already trade him out for a while, that's, hold on the rookies, flexibility, and do not trade when you have no signal or very low time of reflection. That's always a bad trade.
That's some great advice, mate. And that's the thing with this game, isn't it? You said you started in 2017. You learn new lessons each year, don't you? And new strategies that you put in place.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, I can't wait to see what you're going to do next year. And just on that, mate, and we'll end this in a minute because I know you're a very busy man. You're a dad. You work hard. You've got many things to do. But look, looking ahead to next year in 2022, and look, I know I've got no trades at the moment, so what I'm going to be looking to do in this last 4 weeks is maybe look at some data, really keep a keen eye on some of the players that I may be looking to select next year. Have you locked in anyone at this stage in your 2022 side, or are you looking at a particular structure? Who are some of your locks, if any, going into 2022?
Well, there are two players that I'm really desperately missing this year. It's Walsh and Steele. I don't have them. They went big, they went huge the last 4 or 5 weeks, and I really want them next year, definitely. And I will just keep going with Macrae and Bontempelli. They are the kings. They are both amazingly good. Always captain option. So what will be interesting next year is the rucks, really.
It's going to be a big discussion, isn't it? Because we've seen what's happened with Gawn Sealing this year. Grundy's been underwhelming, at times. And we've seen the emergence of big, bad Sean Darcy. So, look, it's going to be really interesting. Another thing Spills and I were talking about was another really popular mid-price option in the rucks this year that didn't end up getting up was Braden Pruce as well from GWS. So does he come into play next year? Will he be maybe around the mid 250 mark? It's going to be a big discussion next year in the rucks because traditionally I've just been one to lock in Gawn and Grundy. I think I've done that probably the last 3 years. I normally just set and forget my rucks. But next year I think there'll be some really interesting strategies. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what your ruck setup's going to be looking like next year, mate. But with those locks that you have, I think Sam Walsh is going to be a big one because if you look at his scoring patterns and, his average each year, up. So I think the sky's the absolute limit with Walsh. He's only going to get stronger. He's an endurance beast. So I think that he could be, almost, well, I won't say a must-have at this stage. It's silly to say must-haves at this stage, but he's going to be really, really hard to knock back because I only see him going up. I don't see him going backwards for any reason. I don't see any fourth-year blues coming. But, it could be, well, I think this year really was his uber breakout year, wasn't it, with the average that he's pumped out so far. But, who knows what's going to happen with Sam Walsh next year. And I think we'll have some really strong rookies, your Horn, young Dacos, I think will play a lot of football next year. So I'm actually pretty keen myself on starting with some of the big midfielders next year because that's one thing that I've found really difficult is, trying to bring in Bontempelli at 650 plus K. It's almost impossible at times. So I'm going to try to start with a couple more of these big dogs. And as you said, really try to make sure that I focus on having flexibility with DPP. I know that some of the positional changes for next year have already been leaked or they're almost locked in at this stage. So we'll have players possibly such as Lockie Hunter, Mitch Duncan up forward, Timmy English as a ruck forward, which would be really, really interesting. And, blokes like Laird in the midfield, Mills in the midfield. Laird's been terrific this year, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But, it's going to be a big season next year, mate. Yeah.
It will be. I may go again with a cheap ruck too. If you don't know, instead of paying 700K for someone who you are not sure is going to score big, just take a second ruck, a cheap option that looks going to play every week, which was not the case for Flynn. But anyway. Yeah, and agree. Yeah, to go big, to go heavy in midfield because the premium midfielders, they always score better than the best defenders anyway. So that's a lesson learned again.
Very true, Julien. Well, I'll tell you what, mate, I think that's a wrap for now. Firstly, can I thank you very, very much for joining me tonight. I know Spills was really disappointed that he couldn't be here also. Mate, I've really, really enjoyed following your journey from round one all the way up to this round as well. And look, I still think that you've got a big chance to still crack into those rankings and definitely get inside that top 250, mate. I'll certainly be rooting for you. And thank you very much again for coming on the channel, mate. Really appreciate it, Jules.
Thank you, Dia. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm very, very happy to be there with you.
Thank you very much. And just before you go, mate, do you want to give your Twitter a bit of a shout out, mate? Is it @CrazyFrogs? Is it Julien, if people want to follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. It's SC_crazyfrogs. And yeah, just follow me.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Julien, thank you very much for joining me, and everyone else that's tuning in at the moment, thank you very much. It's been an absolute honour having this Supercoach legend on the channel, and we'll certainly continue to follow his journey, not only this year, but also going into the future as well. So thanks very much for joining us, guys, and we'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers, Jules. Yes.